Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 247, being recorded on April 17th. Yes, I don't know why I always have to look. April 17th, 2013. I'm Ryan Schrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malventano.
And it's a special day here because Alan is joining us from 8-bit land, the world of large pixels, low sound bit rates, and
some Mario music in the background.
we'll add some of that in after the fact. Ken, make sure you do that, but not enough to get us taken off YouTube or something. So it's been a week. We're back. We're here to talk about hardware. We actually have some pretty interesting stuff to discuss, but let's get into a couple of housekeeping things first. Last week we gave away the Roccat Cone Plus gaming mouse worth about $138,000. And the winner of that was Randy I. Randy did not trust us with his last name, so I only put Randy I. I guess it could be his last name. Just the letter I. So
maybe it's really Randy E.
Randy E. So he won this mouse. So congratulations to Randy. We'll have that shipped out this week. And we have another contest, if I can, excuse me while I reach.
It's the Hitachi Magic Wand, right?
No. No, you get presents for your wife on your own time. We have our own stuff. How about this? I think it fills the whole frame. This is the Roccat ISKU, or ISKU. How would you pronounce that?
ISKU.
So this is a ultra-fast profile switching gaming keyboard that has all kinds of macro keys. It has blue key illumination, 3 unique easy shift zones. That's a thing. 36 easy-to-reach macro keys, live recording, medium height keys with optimal keystroke response with 1,000 hertz polling and advanced anti-ghosting. I'm not just reading this off the back of the box.
Are you sure that is not the Hitachi Magic Wand you're holding up?
It looks very different than this.
But it acts
It doesn't
the
have
same.
thumb buttons.
Right. Well, maybe it is. Hold on. Extra large wrist rest. So that's pretty close. Anyway, this is. Let me go ahead and I'll.
And it does have something called the Easy Zone.
So
It does.
wait, I don't.
Oh,
I don't
dear
know what
Lord.
you're going. So you can win this mouse. Here we go. If we bring up the page here on our computer, Ken, this is the Roccat ISKU black USB wired gaming keyboard, $89, normal price. You can win this for absolutely free. All you have to do is go to pcper.com/podcast on Thursday when this show posts. If you're watching live, you got to wait till tomorrow. Go back to that post. There will be a form on the bottom of the post where you just enter your name, email address, and how awesome pcper is, and you get a chance to win an MMO approved. It says at the bottom, MMO approved gaming keyboard. So let's talk about some articles that went up on the site this week. First up, we had a case review from Lee that looked at the Enermax Ostrog GT mid-tower gaming chassis. Besides its kind of awkward naming scheme, the Ostrog is apparently
It's a small Russian citadel.
Is it? Is that what that is?
Yes, it is.
I did not know that. I thought it was a fortress for my hardware, according to this banner on the review. It's a fortress for my hardware. Again, you could get.
Are you going to put the rocket in there?
Stop talking about the magic wand.
All right.
All right, Josh is not allowed to have any more beer until the end of the show because we need him to be
you're
awake. We need him to be awake at the end too. At least wait for us to get past your story, could you? Let's wait for that. So it kind of has. Let's see. We look at the key features of it. 32 millimeter clearance on the back of the motherboard tray for cable routing. It's got top I/O. They call it easy installation with patented slide-in. Oh, Jesus. Slide-in optical drive bays.
Stop it.
I'm just reading the text. Hold on, wait, Josh, hold on.
Oh, I got to mute myself.
It rails with anti-vibration rubber pads.
Who writes this stuff?
Chinese companies.
Okay, that explains a lot.
But you can tell this because they still call it a VGA card in the description as well. It has a massive hard drive storage, supports up to 13 devices.
That one wasn't even funny.
It can support triple graphics cards, USB 3.0, et cetera, et cetera. It's a transparent acrylic side panel. So it's a nice case, fairly low cost. It's mostly plastic construction. Lee seemed to like it though, in terms of just general purpose usability, decent cooling. It didn't have any hot swappable 3.5-inch hard drive bays, which is kind of a minor quibble to have, but it did have good case cooling options.
Well, and like
fans
most of them,
included.
it's got the oversized top cooling, so you can very easily fit a radiator on there if you go for an all-in-one cooling solution.
Yeah, like the H100 or something like that. That's pretty
Yeah.
nice. It's your traditional mid-range, mid-tower type case, right? So what was $75 currently selling at Newegg, and he did get an award, our silver option there. So if you're looking for lower cost cased options and maybe you don't like what some of the other vendors are doing in terms of look and styling and stuff like that, give that a try. In a continuing discussion of frame rating and all that means for PC gaming and that kind of stuff going forward, I posted another article this week that is different than our past ones. It's not a benchmark fest. You're not going to see tons of graphs on here. There are some graphs, but this is more of an attempt to demonstrate phenomena that we see here in our testing, but are sometimes they're difficult to describe, and unless you have the capability to see some things side by side, consumers that only have access to one hardware configuration maybe don't necessarily get the importance of some of the things we're saying. So this article, Visual Effects of Vsync on Gaming Animation. And the idea is pretty simple. We wanted to show you how enabling Vsync can help some things, but it can also hurt some things, right? The main issue we came with from the frame rating series was that Crossfire configurations from AMD tended to have issues with run frames, small frames that were counting towards your average frame rate per second, but weren't really adding to your perceived frame rate per second in gameplay. And one of the answers from AMD was, well, if you enable Vsync, those runt frames go away, and they do. But they claimed that there was no animation difference between Vsync on or Vsync off, even with when your frame rate was not fully above 60 frames per second, right? So if we take a look at this graph here, so this video, if you haven't seen these videos yet, I highly encourage you to download the MP4 versions of these videos to your PC and play them back locally. They're high bitrate. YouTube doesn't really show you the best versions of these videos. We uploaded them to YouTube because there are some people that aren't going to download them, and we wanted to have some kind of option there. But being able to tell the difference between 30 frames per second in a Vsync configuration is very difficult over YouTube. So download the files. They're 200, 250 megs a piece, and it will definitely make things a lot easier. If you look at this graph, so here's what we did. I took a very high-powered configuration. For those of you that need to know, it was a Titan SLI system, I think. But the thing is, it didn't even matter what it was. And we made sure that it was way more powerful than the game needed, and we enabled regular Vsync. And we got that black line that you see on the bottom of there. And that is frame times consistently at 16 milliseconds, consistently thus at 60 frames per second. One slight hiccup down, one frame that dropped below 16 milliseconds over the course of 60 seconds of recorded video. That's pretty good. The orange line, you'll notice, is running at 33 milliseconds the entire time. And it's actually a video recorded on the same hardware, but using adaptive Vsync half refresh rate option in NVIDIA's control panel. And this basically says, don't limit me to my max refresh rate of the display, limit me to half the display refresh rate. And that's useful for other circumstances, but for our specific use case in this story, it was to get us a fixed 30 frames per second result video file. And I'm calling those our reference files. And the reason I call this reference instead of saying this is a Titan SLI is because it doesn't matter what hardware is behind it. It could be two 7990s. It could be three 7970s. It could probably be two 7970s in many cases. And if the frame rate stayed above 60 frames per second the entire time, this would be the animation rate that you would get, right? So we created those two files in order to do two specific comparisons. One is this one. This is Battlefield 3 2560 by 1440. Vsync at 60 hertz fixed, the black line on the bottom that you see there, versus the orange line. And the orange line that you'll notice doesn't really look like a line. It almost looks like hash marks or something like that. And what you're seeing is where you're seeing this constant back and forth between 16 milliseconds and 33 millisecond frame times. That is, frames are being rendered at one vsync interval and then two vsync intervals, and then 1 1 1 2 2 1 1 1 2 2, some pattern that varies. Because as the frame rate dips would normally be above 60, then you'll see a frame rate of 60. Where it would normally drop below 60, it actually has to go all the way back down to 30 frames per second. There's no in-betweens when you have vsync. That's the end result of vsync and not having visual tearing on your display. So my theory was that, okay, can you tell the difference between 60 and 30? I think it's easier with these side-by-side videos. I think most people can tell that at 100% speed. I think almost everybody can see it at 50, and everybody should be able to see it at 20% speed. Now let's compare 60 frames per second static versus a vsync configuration. Now again, we're using a single 7970 card for this vsync comparison, but it doesn't matter. It has no. This could be a single 680. This could be a pair of 650 Ti cards and SLI. It doesn't matter. We're not comparing AMD versus NVIDIA in this configuration or in these tests. We're just showing you what does vsync do to your gaming situation. And what we found is in the video, the difference between 60 frames per second and an animation that goes between 60 and 30, you can tell the difference, again, fairly easily. And I think that makes sense. The big kind of comparison point, I guess, is our last video demonstration. This is 30 frames per second static consistent frame rate, which is this black line here, against that same orange line that we saw above, the exact same vsync run that we saw above. So what we're comparing here is which is a better experience for the gamer? Is it 30 frames per second where every frame is completely evenly spaced and it is a smooth animation, meaning there's no stutter, there's no hiccups, it's not as high a frame rate, but it is consistent, versus the orange line, which is on average a higher frame rate per second and over the entirety of the benchmark run, of the 60-second run, but it has inconsistent frame times. You will see frame time variances where you'll see, one vsync interval, and then you have to wait two vsync intervals, and then 1 1 1 2 2 2 1 1 1 2 2 1 2 1 2, and whatever patterns that happens to come out as. So that was the more difficult comparison, I think, and not everybody could see it. Not everybody could tell, and I hope that most people downloaded the files rather than use the YouTube videos, because again, when you're looking for something that's very difficult to see, using Flash video, compressed and limited on frame rates and that kind of stuff is going to be difficult to see for sure. Whereas the downloaded videos that we have available are actually 60 frame per second, 1080p, 10 megabit video files. So the second page, we actually did the same thing with Sleeping Dogs instead of Battlefield 3, and we did the same thing: 60 versus 30, 60 versus vsync. I'm sorry, yeah, 60 versus vsync and then 30 versus vsync, and asked you guys to say what you thought looked better. Which one did you think was 30 frames per second, and which one looked better? Which one was actually a better gaming experience? I'm curious, for those of us on the panel, Jeremy, when you saw these videos before the publication, I was kind of sharing it. What were your kind of thoughts on what you saw?
Well, for one thing, it was a lot harder to figure out than I thought it would be. Some of those videos, you're sort of looking at it and going, okay, I know there's a difference. But until you start really focusing, you don't see it, because a lot of the time you're sort of just looking at the entire thing. Right. But you start to watch it a couple of times, and Ryan was dirty and didn't tell us the answers. It was just, hey, here's a blind test.
Dirty.
But after you start watching it for a while, you start to notice it. Okay, yeah, I see this one is a little bit more stuttery, but this one is doing some weird catch-up stuff, especially when you move the mouse very quickly, like at the doors, at least for the Battlefield 3 one. The doors were a dead giveaway for what we were seeing.
Yeah.
And, yeah, you do notice it.
Josh, what'd you think?
I thought it was an excellent representation of the issues you see with Vsync and not and tearing and just smoothness of animation. It was a nice comparison to really see what some of the things that we actually see. I know that's kind of a roundabout way of saying it, but perception is kind of strange that way. And, it's kind of like when we talked about 30 versus 60 frames per second. I mean, just in general, some people were easily able to see and some people not. And it's again, perception. It's how much you kind of train yourself to see these things and how much you actually immerse yourself. Somebody who's not a gamer or just plays, that farm game on whatever that is.
I don't know what we're talking about.
Farmville, whatever.
Facebook?
EVE Online?
There you go.
Yeah, that they're not going to notice these things. It's just guys running down an alley. So what? But somebody who plays competitive first-person shooters is going to say, "Hey, yeah, that one's noticeably smoother." When I pan, I have a lot more, either less tearing or smaller chunks of screen that go by. I mean, it's again, it's training yourself to really see it. And like Jeremy said, I mean, you got to sometimes watch it a couple of times to really start picking up the subtleties.
Allyn, did you get a chance to try any of this? I don't know if you did before you left, or if you had any thoughts on it.
I did take a quick look at a couple of them, but here's the bigger issue I have with this is something we haven't been able to show people yet, is that when you turn Vsync on, there's usually much more input lag. So, and for that reason, I feel like it's sort of a cop-out for anyone to say, hey, it doesn't do this, even despite the fact that you sort of obliterated that argument in the first place. But that argument itself is sort of like, you're not going to tell serious gamers, hey, your quality is going to be better if you turn Vsync on.
Right.
They're not going to care.
A problem with that as well is certain game engines handle Vsync better than others. Like Skyrim was based off Gamebryo. Terrible. When you turn on Vsync, it buffers so many damn frames. It's awful.
Right.
But
and that's its default configuration.
Things like Quake 3, Unreal Tournament.
Games from the 90s.
Yeah, they handle Vsync and input latency a whole lot better.
Yeah, I mean so the input latency issue is one of our next projects, right? And it's a longer term project. So it's going to take the same kind of work, hopefully in less time than it did to get the initial frame rating stories, developed and published and out there. But I do agree that it's a significant part. If you read the third page of the story, it kind of brings that up. It says, look, there are other issues here that Vsync brings in, but we can't get you a perfect analysis of it yet, so we're kind of waiting to hold that off. And I do understand some people would think that this is kind of an unfair comparison. It doesn't really matter. If you had to slow down a video to 20% or even 50% to notice the animation difference in Sleeping Dogs, for example, well, why is that? I mean, that seems like you're just nitpicking. You're looking for things to find problems with. And there's validity to that, but there are some people that can see it at 100% speed. I am one of those people. Ken is not one of those people. Like, we made all these videos and we were looking at them side by side, and I'd be like, what are you talking about? You can't see it. It's happening right here. Don't you see the wait, go, wait, go, wait, go pattern? He's like, you just can't see it. And so it's very individual on whether or not you see it easily. There was one comment on the story that kind of made me feel bad, though, because he said, I hadn't seen it before. I watched your videos. I saw the slowdown at 21%. Now when I play my games with Vsync on, I see it all the time. And I was like, well,
you've ruined me.
Sorry I've ruined your gaming
Some
experience.
things you cannot unsee.
Yes.
Like that donkey show in the Philippines.
Say again, Allyn.
Oh, Dan, yeah, sorry.
Allyn's seen the donkey show in the Philippines.
Well, you never know. So it's kind of interesting to think about it in that way, that you can change how people see. And that's kind of been my job for a decade or so, is to see, I see quality differences in textures and anti-aliasing things when most people would not, because that's kind of part of my job, is to find those differences. And it works out. So, the point of this was not to crap on AMD or crap on NVIDIA or anything like that. It was to say, okay, for people who say just enable Vsync, it fixes everything. It can fix everything. If your frame rate is always above 60, it will get rid of runt frames, but it introduces input latency. That won't go away. But if your game ever goes below 60, you're going to have these issues that crop up. NVIDIA has a couple of interesting answers we're going to dive some more into with our frame rating capability, adaptive Vsync and smooth Vsync options that do attempt to limit this frame time variance issue. NVIDIA or AMD doesn't really have anything in their drivers. Somebody told me that Radeon Pro has that in there as well. That's part of our analysis of that as well. We've already started working with that software and figuring out what we can do with that. But there's a lot more to dive into here, so we've rambled on too long. If you haven't read this piece, please go to pcper.com and check it out. Download these videos. You can see here's a little graph of this is actually from an AnonTech article they did 3 years ago, I think, on it. And check out the review. Download the file. See if you can see for yourself. Take the poll. I'll probably wait till next week to really kind of dive into the poll results and see what the answers look like. Which people prefer the 30 frames per second fixed, and which ones prefer the Vsync. What's interesting is I think is when you slow it down to 20% on those third videos, the 30 frames per second versus Vsync, if you can't see the difference in the frame time hitching, then you're going to think the Vsync one looks better because it's running at a higher average frame rate. But if you can see that, even though the frame rate on the 30 frames per second is lower, it should look better. There's a lot to get into. I'd encourage you guys to go check that out because we spent more time on it, more frame ratings, more of that kind of stuff. Matt is here in the office doing testing as well for another article on updating our frame rating results.
Is he drooling out of the side of his mouth yet?
No, he hasn't gone catatonic quite yet from graphics testing. In truth, it's not like he does it every day, so he's got these breaks built in. Josh, let's talk about, in a somewhat brief manner, I guess, GlobalFoundries, what you think about it today, and why it's not going out of business and why it will maybe be better later.
That's a really good question. Are you sure we have time for this?
I said brief.
We're going to make time.
I said brief.
Well, it is 8:47, my time.
Go ahead.
Anyway, GlobalFoundries. You know, when they originally were split off from AMD, there was a lot of hope that they would be a good competitor to TSMC and potentially, where am I from? Texas? No, potentially offer products and lines that TSMC would not be able to, and the expertise that these guys had in competing with Intel, pretty much head-to-head, we thought it would be a wonderful thing for everyone. Well, 2009, 2010, 2011 went by, and not a whole lot of positive things came out of there. If you remember, their first really big push into new process technology was 32 nanometer SOI. It was late. AMD's products were late. There were yield issues at first. Both GlobalFoundries and AMD worked on those things to fix them. And then their roadmap was pretty aggressive as well. I believe that they were thinking of, with risk production of 28 nanometer high-K metal gate based process in early 2011. We thought, hey, this is going to be 10 to 11 months sooner than what TSMC is going to be able to offer. Well, that didn't really come through. TSMC came out first with their 28 nanometer process. We saw graphics chips from both NVIDIA and AMD utilizing that process node, and GlobalFoundries was nowhere to be seen. Well, they kind of started getting their act together in 2012. At the end of 2012, they had their 28 nanometer process up and running. 32 nanometer PD-SOI was running really, really well, even though AMD's designs were not fantastic. They at least were producing them in the quantities that they needed. Now, this past year, they've announced quite a few technologies, such as their 14 nanometer XM FinFET process, which will be a low-power 14 nanometer process. It's not going to be SOI at all. It's not PD-SOI or FD-SOI. It's going to be based on bulk silicon, but it'll be...
Could you tell us PD and FD? What does that mean?
Okay, FD is a next generation of SOI called fully depleted, and the current 32 nanometer SOI is PD SOI, which is partially depleted. Now, if you ask me to go into the physical characteristics...
No, I think that goes
electrical-
beyond the scope of the podcast today.
Yeah, I think it's beyond the scope of my little brain.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's not go into that. It's all about how thick that thing is.
Gotcha.
Right. Anyway.
See, I
So
didn't laugh
there
like a little kid because I'm mature and I can handle sexual innuendo talk.
No, you can't.
Okay,
But you turn red.
I do.
Anyway. So, yeah, they've made some interesting choices in what they're doing. They've got the 14XM. They've got a 22 nanometer and 20 nanometer high-K metal gate. And they're also exploring this FD SOI, the fully depleted SOI. Currently, they are a partner with ST Micro, which is one of the first companies that showed off a fully depleted SOI-based processor with the Cortex A9 that was running at 3 gigahertz at standard voltages. It could go down to 0.6 volts at 1 gigahertz. I mean, it was a very, very efficient processor, but the only problem is they just couldn't produce these in enough quantity. Something like 300 wafers a month, which is just, it's not going to be able to cut it when somebody like Samsung or even Nokia is buying your parts. You just cannot physically produce enough for what they are demanding. GlobalFoundries is going to be utilizing this process node at the, I think, risk production 2013 end of, and full deployment in 2014. If customers demand it, they're looking into doing that at 22 and 20 nanometer. So it could be a really interesting technology. And what's really interesting about FDSOI is that even Intel is looking at these wafers because once they start getting around 14 and 10 nanometer, some of the physical characteristics of these fully depleted SOI wafers really are additive to what they're doing with their 3D tri-gates. So GlobalFoundries looks like they're stepping into that pool before anybody else. They've kind of caught up to the rest of the industry. They've shown off the 20 nanometer TSVs through silicon vias. The process that does that is mature enough that they can start doing risk production of some of these parts once 20 nanometer comes out, and that's the whole stacked die concept. When you've got like a processor and multiple memory chips on top, they're all connected through these TSVs. So they're catching up. Now the problem is their execution up until now has not been tremendous, and we're not entirely sure that they have changed the ways. I mean, they talk a pretty big talk. They've got a lot of test wafers out there. They've got some interesting technology. They're part of the common platform with Samsung and IBM, two guys who are still pretty heavy hitters in the process technology, especially IBM. They do so much R&D work. It's not even funny. I mean, stuff that we don't hear and see that is very commonplace for IBM. So it's going to be interesting to see what GlobalFoundries does. If they have their stuff together, they could be a true competitor to TSMC, and in fact, they might have enough clean space room to do some interesting things and compete against Intel, which would be good for AMD and its other partners. Right. But we have yet to see if they truly can execute on their roadmap that they haven't been able to do effectively up until about, the middle of 2012. So at the end of this, are you feeling bullish about GlobalFoundries going into the next year? They have interesting stuff, but again, they have to deliver the wafers. I mean, they've been delivering 28 nanometer products to, guys like Roccat, which is one of the largest SoC producers in China, and they have put their chips in a lot of products there. I mean, that's 1.5 billion people buying that stuff up, so it's not a small market. There's a list of other guys, I think Rambus that they're working with. Qualcomm is looking at them. And there's a handful of others as well as other manufacturers who do not want to advertise that they're yet working with GlobalFoundries on some of these parts. So, but as you know, AMD is one of their biggest clients. They utilize all the 32 nanometer SOI, and they're starting to push out the 28 nanometer HK metal gate, which we will see later on this year in the form of the steamroller-based APU.
Interesting. So, okay. I mean, it's interesting to hear the updates of what I would say a company that back in 2009 looked like it had the potential to kind of, that's a bad pun at this point, steamroll the like TSMC, and like they were going to quickly become a dominant player. But it appears that it's going to definitely, if it happens, it's going to be slower than I think a lot of us originally expected.
Yeah. And they might just be getting up to speed now. And they have, I mean, there's no problem in foundry technology that cannot be solved without time and money. And their parent company, ATIC, has got plenty of money. And GlobalFoundries is starting to look like they're pushing profits already.
Okay.
So that's a positive thing, and hopefully they can keep that going, and we'll have a really good competitor to TSMC and maybe eventually Intel when it comes to process technology.
Cool. Let's bring Allyn back into the fold from 8-Bit Land. Let's talk about a review that he published today, actually, that we posted today, of the OCZ Vertex 3.20, 3.20, 240 gig SSD.
All right, so the wow, feedback. First of all, apologies for the really crappy mic.
Yeah, you
There's a
should
lesson learned on
apologize.
that.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to travel, and, stuff like that. Okay, so we reviewed the Vertex 3.20. This is basically the same exact thing as a Vertex 3, except with 20 nanometer flash installed, hence the 0.20. Kind of an interesting naming scheme there. Drives available in 120 gig, 240 gig capacities. I don't think they're going to go any higher than 240 on this one. And we just ran it through the regular paces. So as far as sequential reads, sequential writes, acts like just about every other SSD out there as far as saturating the interface. And at this point, the interface has been the bottleneck for a long time.
Right.
In that regard, when we got to the trace-based testing, like the PC Mark kind of stuff, it sort of fell a little bit behind the pack, and realized we did include the other SandForce pushing 20 nanometer SSD in this review, which is the Intel 335. And we started to notice around the PC Mark part of the review that, well, that's kind of weird. This Vertex 3.20 is a little bit behind that one. That seems, okay, well, we'll see how it pans out with the IO meter. Well, we got to that, and it really didn't look that good anymore. Now, for those looking at the IO meter results while they happen to be listening to this, we also included amongst the pack of a small variant of SandForce-driven SSDs. We included the Samsung 840 Pro and the OCZ Vector. Okay, so that's two other completely different controllers, and those two are newer controllers than SandForce, and therefore they do much better, and they're pretty much sort of in a league of their own. If you sort of take those and put them to the side, and you look at the remaining cluster of just the SandForce results, they're all pretty evenly matched, but there is sort of a band, like a spacing to them. And what you'll notice at the spacing to it is the Intel 335 is at the top of that range.
Okay.
And almost at the bottom, if not at the bottom, but like second to the bottom, maybe behind the Agility 3, for example, is the Vertex 3.20. Now, what's weird about that is that the Intel 335 is also a 20 nanometer flash drive. You'd expect if there was some sort of performance penalty or issues with 20 nanometer versus 25 nanometer, the 335 should have the same, the same disadvantage compared to the Vertex 3.20, but it's the opposite, which is just weird, right? And now realize it's still a good performing drive. It's just that it's not going as fast as the direct competitor to it. Is the only
specific performance area where this drive falls behind is on that IOPS? Like, it looks like if I look at the YAPT results, for example, the random reads, the random writes, sequential reads, sequential writes, they all seem to be pretty much in line with the other drives. Is that just because of the saturating the bus speed at this point?
Yeah, all those tests that saturate the bus, you're hitting that limit first. So it's really not a You know, those tests are getting to the point where they don't show a whole terrible lot of difference between any of the SAN4-based drives
Gotcha.
anymore. It just, you know, it's you're bottlenecked by other things basically. But the iometer test is the really the one that sort of hits an SSD the hardest, right? Now again, it's not necessarily what if you are doing nothing but running Office and like, you know, a game or two, and you're really light on your SSD. Chances are you know, you're not going to see huge differences between, say, the 335 or the Vertex 3.20 in those cases. But things where you're just booting in the system and it's trying to launch Windows and every other thing you have running in your taskbar down by the clock there, and all those other things are firing up at startup, that's pretty much exactly the kind of workloads that you'll see. You know, basically Windows is doing the equivalent of that ramp up in IOs that it's throwing at the SSD, as we've shown those graphs.
Gotcha.
Right. So it doesn't stay there for very long, mind you, but during, you know, in that moment, it's riding somewhere, you know, halfway, maybe in the worst case, 3/4 of the way up that slope. So wherever the SSD happens to sit for that model, that's how fast, you know, the system is going to handle that situation. So there's all that, right? It still performs decent. Realize an Agility 3, for example, is nothing to sneeze at, right? It's still good performing drive, right? Not as good as, you know, modern SSD controllers that have come out since SANForce, but, you know, still a decent SSD. Okay. Now we get into pricing, and that's where I really have the issue on this guy. Is I looked around for pricing on, again, the direct competitor. So I want Intel 335, which when it came out, I remember complaining that it was kind of pricey for 20 nanometers. This being the Intel drive I'm talking about.
Right.
Well, the Intel drive's been on the market for a little while, and it's at a lot of different vendors. And the pricing is, if you look even further than Newegg, you can find some pretty good deals on it, because there are a lot of people that have it. There's a lot of volume out there. That is not the case right now, because the Vertex 3.20 just came out, which is a shame, because the prices I was looking at for the Intel unit were for retail packaging. It had the bracket for 3.5-inch bays. It had software for cloning. It had all this other stuff. You know, basically the full retail, all the goodies in the box kind of thing. Meanwhile, OCZ made the decision with the Vertex 3.20. This is the first one that I've seen comes in just like a plastic sort of not blister pack, but, you know, a little plastic with a couple of clips on it packaging. Just a really thin manual. There's no bracket. You know, in the past, all of the other OCZ models, regardless of what they were, have come in at least a package that had a bracket. So they seem to have pulled back on that as well, and the pricing, as it is right now, it's still on the high side. We're talking like anywhere between $10 to $30 or $40 spread, depending on where you're looking. And that spread I'm speaking of is in where the Intel drive is actually cheaper. And further than that, I was finding other SANForce 25 nanometer based SSDs, and realized those are ones with the older style flash that actually has slightly more endurance to it than 20 nanometer, and in some cases even more performance, even if you look at the iometer results that we included, right? Because we also had the what was the other? Yeah, the SSD 520, right? I threw that guy in there. That guy even threw, you know, the Vertex 3 in there. But yeah, I mean, just, you know, you could probably find Agility 3s on sale, maybe even for cheaper than this right now.
Right.
So it's really, I'm just sort of scratching my head on it. Like, the price really needs to come down. I hope that it can sooner than later, or at a minimum, some kind of a firmware. OCZ's been known for this, where they're really good about coming back after the fact and issuing some form of a performance enhancing firmware. If it can happen at all, then OCZ will definitely do that. I'd like to see this Vertex 3.20 running at least on par, if not better, than the Intel SSD 335. It has to be capable of doing it. It's the same hardware, right? It's just a firmware tweak.
Yeah. Interesting. So, I guess if we see the Vertex 3.20 come down in price, it becomes a much more competitive option. And I think the SSD market is fairly crowded in these specific kind of price categories, in these very specific, capacities and that kind of stuff. I mean, even just looking at your IOPS graphs and that kind of stuff to see that mass of SandForce-based drives kind of all taking up a lot of the same space. Interesting. Okay. So check out that full review. That just went up on Wednesday at pcper.com if you're looking, even if you just need an update on if you need a refresher course on what current SSDs perform in which way, you can get a lot of that information from this review.
Because I know that Allyn misses J-Micron badly.
No.
And the days of testing those.
Well, oh no, testing them was easy. Because they were very consistently crappy.
But at least you had, a good representation of what is good and what is bad.
That's true. There were other lines to compete with the hard drive that makes the bottom axis, the bottom
all right.
line of the. A lot of people don't realize that. Actually, I pointed out to someone the other day, and they're like, "Wait, that's another sample, like the iometer graphs. There's actually a line at the bottom. That is the Velociraptor, 1 terabyte."
Oh, that gray one at the bottom, yeah.
There is a line there. That is another drive. Sorry.
Okay. So throughout the show, as we scroll past these articles, you probably saw this picture of me off to the right, and you're probably wondering, well, who is that fine, attractive young man in that picture, and what is he? Why is he standing there looking at me?
An indecent proposal from Ryan Shroud.
It depends on how big the donations get, I guess. But I'll offer up Josh first. So today we, after quite a bit of internal debate and figuring out what we were going to do, decided to go ahead and launch a crowdfunding project through Indiegogo. And what you see here is our attempt to raise funds for a very, very specific purpose. We want to increase our capability of video and video production. We want to make everything look a lot nicer than it already is. If you scroll down...
Does that include me?
Well, I didn't really... If you read the fine print, Josh, you're not in it anymore.
Damn it.
But only if we raise enough money.
I was hoping that whole
but only if we raise enough money.
Viagra combination, year supply, do wonders.
I don't have that kind of budget. I don't think anybody else does either. But anyway, so what we want to do is we've had plans built up for what we wanted to convert this office to for well over a year, basically since we first got into this space. And although it's somewhat of a crude drawing, this is what the kind of 3D schematics work that my good friend Joey built up for us on designing the set and that kind of stuff. These are the ideas that we have. We're going to have, we have very specific lighting that we're going to buy and implement behind us. We have 3 different sets that we want to integrate. One that allows us to do stand-up, short format, 2-3 minute, maybe green screen capability. We have one that kind of sits us at a table for roundtable discussions, maybe the one-on-one talks that we've had with AMD and NVIDIA and ASUS here in the studio, and then one in the corner that's more in line for the Josh type events where we're sitting on a couch, drinking beer and playing games, talking about things that way. Talking about
Stuff.
things. And so, we've kind of budgeted out some stuff for that. And we came up with, we need at least $10,000 to kind of get that rolling. We just haven't been able to pony up the funds for it internally yet. And then we have our stretch goal, our kind of larger goal would be, if we can double that, we can really start to get in the high quality production gear here that allows us to hook up, lots of cameras and lots of lights all at the same time, quickly switch between them, allows us to, spend much, much, much less time reorganizing things to capture video and share it and produce it, and more time just actually making the videos. And so we can start to get into things like video switchers, HD SDI capture cards that have 4, 6, 8 inputs. We can even go into 4K capability and that kind of stuff. So we have a lot of cool things, a lot of cool ideas that we want to get into, and we're hoping to get your guys' help with that. So you can go to our page. If you go to pcper.com today, right now, for the next 30 days at the very least, on the right-hand side, you will see that picture of me, this one right here, and you can click on that, and it will take you to our Indiegogo page that will let you know about the perks that we have and how you can donate. You don't have to donate a specific amount. You can donate anything. Even donating $1 or $5 will help, right? The more individual donors we have, the better it looks, the more I guess, effect it will have on what we're able to do. Now, we have some interesting perks as well. If you do $10, we're going to create a page to thank everybody that sponsored our project, our crowdfunded project, and list you guys there as making sure that you can point to everybody that you are one of the people that donated and some butthead buddy of yours was not. If you donate $25, we're going to do the first for PC Perspective. We're going to offer a banner ad-free version of the website. So by the end of May or June or something like that, we'll have this integrated so that when this project is complete, we will be able to enable your account to disable or re-enable the ads if you still want to view the ads. Some people find them interesting, and that's how you can see new products. But if you don't want it, you can turn off. $25 is what we're asking for that. If you go up to $50, you get the thanks. You get the T-shirt. Oh, I'm sorry. You get the thanks. You get the ad-free version of the website, and we're going to have a custom-designed T-shirt. We haven't finished the design for it yet, but it will be unique. It's not like a reprint of a QuakeCon workshop or anything like that. It will be a completely custom shirt that you can wear to QuakeCon to show off to people that you got one of those shirts. If you go into the $100 level, you can join the PC Perspective Gold Club, which is something brand new we are creating for our project here. And before Josh gets into anything about what he wishes it was, it is actually kind of an exclusive little club here that you'll get the banner ad free version of the website. We're going to host live streams that only they have access to. So, if you want to ask questions, if you want to get some more individualized time with the team, you want to make fun of Josh, you want to
find out if we're wearing pants or not.
Well, yeah, we can get to all kinds of different camera angles if we want to go
Do you get a free toaster?
No free toasters. But maybe the most important thing for people is to pay attention to what we're going to be doing. We're going to bring in sponsors to have Gold Club member-specific giveaways. And the ones we've lined up, the ones we've configured already for the rest of this year will probably be pretty impressive for you. So in June, we're going to give away 4 AMD APU and motherboard combinations, right? So complete, platform almost ready out of the box to go. But then let's look at July and August. In July, we're going to be giving away a complete gaming PC powered by Intel, Corsair, and Asus, valued at least $1,500, although that will, honestly, it'll probably be a little bit low. And then in August, we're going to give away a GeForce GTX Titan graphics card. That's a $1,000 video card. So the only people that have the capability to win these prizes are going to be people who join the PC Per Gold Club through this Indiegogo project. So that gives you an idea of some of the stuff we're doing. Also, if you want to go a little bit higher, $200, you get all of the above. Plus, you get to do a Skype call with me or the PC Per team. If you want to talk with Josh individually, I will definitely make that happen. You can have any romantic escapade that you want to have. You can definitely do that, or just get on the call with us, BS, talk about what you're doing. If you have ideas for us, throw them out there, anything like that. For $300, join a spot, maybe in this Brady Bunch collection of people that we can get you on the podcast for a little bit. Ask us some questions. Give us your picks of the week, that kind of stuff. Also, for $300, if you live in the area or want to make the trip to Northern Kentucky, because who wouldn't, you can come visit the studio, hang out while we do some stuff, record some shows. We'll take you to lunch. It's on Ken, and not literally, he's going to pay for it.
Oh, I was going to say,
it's not like the sushi. It's not like the sushi places. No, we're not going to do that. Maybe we'll make that the $3,000 option.
And buttery white skin.
And then we have a $1,000 option remaining as well. if you want to have all that stuff above and then also get to creatively consult with us on a new show using the technology and hardware purchased with this project. And as you can see, we already have one of these two claimed. So that's...
And you know what? There is a hidden $10,000 option.
Oh, yeah.
That I will not sing Sarah McLachlan's In the Arm of the Angels every podcast.
I would definitely pay that, but you're not allowed to contribute to your own project. It's a damn shame. So yeah, go to pcper.com, look on the right-hand side. Please donate for us. If you can, we would really, really, really appreciate it. If you can't, that sucks, but we'll move on. Like I say in the video, we're not going out of business. We're not going under. We're still going to do the same content that we've been doing. What we want to do is be able to enable ourselves to do more content for you guys, to be able to make it better content for you guys. And I think with the support of a fairly modest amount of our actual readers, that we'll be able to hit that goal and do some really cool stuff here into the second half of 2013 and beyond. So that is my sales pitch. That is our ad for the week. But we do have a little teaser. Do we still have time for this, to do this? Some of the ideas of what we're doing, what we can do with extra content when we don't have to focus so much on advertising and we can focus on content. We actually have a new set of things we're working on with Scott in terms of gaming articles. So let's play this short video to talk about what he has in mind for that. Do I need to restart it?
Hey guys, Scott Mitchell here from Piece Perspective. So we're going to start getting reviewing video games. Exciting, hopefully. One thing we're going to do is we're going to try to do a couple reviews and see how feedback is and go from there. But we're also going to try to do it in a different way. A lot of game reviewers have a score of 1 through 10 or 1 through 5 or a letter grade, and they try to quantify the game in terms of that, which a lot of gamers complain about all the time, because how can you really quantify something like that? It could depend on how the reviewer's viewing any given day, or if it's just an artistic medium, which video games hopefully are trying to be. How can you really say one is better art than other? You really can't. It's all about the experience. One thing we do for hardware is that we have badges. So the crap award, which may or not exist, but normally what we do is we start with getting a no badge, or a bronze, silver, gold, or editor's choice award. What we're trying to do is use this system to quantify how much we enjoyed the game. If it's got a really interesting storyline, if it's a guilty pleasure or something, it will get a high score or a low score on the how good of a game it is category. But in terms of PC games, it's really difficult for a PC gamer to get a game they actually enjoy, right? Developers tend to not optimize for a PC platform, oftentimes port from one to another. So we're actually going to use a number system method, we're testing this out at least, as a way of rating a game as a PC game. So if it's just outright broken or the DRM kills it or whatever, it's going to get a fairly low score on that. If they try to go above and beyond, give them all the key binding needs possible, or for example in Wings of Liberty, they brought back the old click around in the Hyperion and talk to people that you used to see back in like Wing Commander days. That would rate them a lot higher, because they're not just doing a good PC game, they're trying to focus on PC gamers. So that 1 through 10 scoring mechanism, we're going to try to basically call out developers who really try to focus on the PC and give them a high score. Let them focus on what makes PC gamers happy and give them the score that comes right out of it. So which means when you're actually looking at our reviews, you're going to have two things to recognize. You're going to have a badge for how good the game we thought was, and a number which should be how good it is we think technically. Two different methods of quantifying a game. When you're going to actually figure out how good a game is in general, you're probably going to want to look more at the badges. The Editor's Choice Award, the games we're really going to be keeping going back to. But at the same token too, we're not going to let people get away with making a console port, because that's going to bomb the numerical score, right? So hopefully this is going to be a good thing and be a start of much more to come. So we'd like to hear from what you guys think and enjoy the content. We got a lot coming up soon.
You're on air,
Speechless.
Ryan.
I don't think you guys got to hear the intro. I'm going to play that again.
So we're going to start getting...
I like this part.
That's
Perfect. I like it. So that is kind of, I guess, in general, one of the types of content that we want to be able to bring to you guys. So again, not going to harp on it for too much longer. I just, we'll talk about it every week while it's going on. But if you have the capability to donate, we'd really appreciate it. We promise to do good stuff with the money that you guys are giving us. It's not all going to Nair to keep Josh's head as shiny and smooth as it.
I was going to say, I'm Lex Luthor and Scott is Clark Kent. I mean,
right?
Can you think of any
Wax on,
greater opposites on the
wax
same
off.
staff?
Yeah,
I said staff.
you did. So looking at the news stuff now, excuse me while I go through this. We've gone late, and I'm going to cut a couple of things. Tim just posted a really good kind of update on, the Haswell overclocking capability, and I encourage you guys to check that out. But I'm going to do a little bit more research on my side, reading what he wrote and what some others have said, and we'll talk about more on that next week, I think.
B-Clock's back, baby.
B-Clock is back. There we go. I see B-Clock values of 100, 125, and 167. So it'd be good. I would like to see that. How about this? NVIDIA rumored to release 700 series GeForce cards at Computex in 2013. That seems pretty soon. I mean, I guess it's not really soon, but considering that, I don't know. I don't know what to say, right? Like, we kind of considering, yeah, it's only 2 months from now. When did Kepler come out? March of 2012, right? So
You're
it'd be
correct.
A year and 3-4 months or something like that. Yeah. So
Weeks.
I don't know. What do you think? Is that too soon?
For NVIDIA?
Yeah.
Is it going to be
Maybe.
new or is it going to be a refresh?
It's going to be a refresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be like the 580 was to the 480 in terms of just a little
That
bit better. But you got to wonder if it's going to be based on GK110. What does that mean for shader counts? What does that mean for GPU performance? It should be much more in line with GK110 than it would be, GK104, right? So the speculation is Computex timeframe, which will be early June. Although Fudzilla is reporting that it could be as soon as May 2013 with an official launch at Computex. So I don't know what that was, but keep that in mind. Samsung Galaxy S4 smartphone is coming. Tim wrote that up as well. Check that out. What else do we have? Oh, this, I got to mention this because this is funny. Colin was out here once, right? Colin Bricks.
Hans Bricks?
No, Colin Bricks.
Hans Bricks.
Close, but Colin. Colin is a product manager at Gigabyte, and his last name is spelled BRIX. And as it just so happens this week, Gigabyte shows off the small form factor BRIX PC during its new Idea Tech tour.
When I see a small form factor thing, all I can think of is when you got it running at night. I hear. Do you still hear the fans screaming, Clarice?
I don't follow the. I mean, I get the reference. I don't
The
follow
fans screaming. Fans.
The
screaming.
fans. The
Fans.
fans.
The small
the
fans that scream.
I don't. Okay.
You don't spend enough time with 40mm fans.
You don't.
No,
In a 1U
I
environment.
burn them up on purpose.
Oh, hey.
So this is meant to compete with Zotac's Nano, Intel's Nook, but it has, I think, a more clever name. It's definitely a better name than the Nook, right? Like, the BRIX is kind of funny. There's an in-joke there, but you don't necessarily have to get the in-joke to think that it's a clever name. The Gigabyte BRIX PC is similar to the Nook with a small motherboard, Intel CPU, MSATA connector for storage, mini PCI for Wi-Fi, and a small chassis. The system is slightly smaller than both the Nook and the Nano, though the BRIX motherboard itself is a bit larger. 100 by 105 millimeters. Looks like they're going to use the same kind of ultra low voltage products, Core i7 3537U. That's actually pretty nice. A dual core processor with hyper-threading clocked at 2 gigahertz, 3.1 max turbo boost speed. So pretty interesting little stuff there. And by little, that was not a pun. I didn't think about it. Did not think about it. Did not think about it. I think we're going to skip the rest of the news for this week and cover some of the. If there's anything major that we missed, we'll cover it in a bonus bit next week. Hey, if we get to our Indiegogo thing, what we could do is we have extra types of podcast shows to talk about. We have maybe semi-daily shows to get in to talk about important news of that day. But let's get into our hardware, software picks of the week. I had mine here. Nope, I lost it. Let me open up a new tab here. I'm going to go first. One of the items as we've been trying to improve our capabilities here at the PC Perspective Studios is audio output. We've been trying to do better. This was going to be a big flagship appearance of us getting everything right until Allyn decided to have the worst audio ever. Is he even still on the line? Yeah, he's still on there? Okay. Allyn, do you want to apologize to everybody again?
I am so sorry.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. It sounds way better than you did before the show started still.
Hey, when you do that, put that up to your mouth and say, "The spice must flow."
The spice must flow.
There we go.
That's better.
All right, so anyway, my pick is actually a Peavey USB-P, which is a USB direct box for outputting computer audio to a PA system. It's essentially a DAC, but it's only $60. It's very specialized. Very few people are going to want this specific product, right? So it's got a USB. It's got a freaking USB-B connector on the back, first of all, and it doesn't include a cable, which is annoying. Now on the output, it has left-right XLR connections. Again, cables that most people don't have. But for our case, we're going into a high-end mixer. We're able to basically create an audio output that we can give to Skype or give to any device and output clean audio. It's got a pretty high-end DAC in there. It doesn't introduce any noise over the analog cables, that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty good device for $60 if you're looking for very specific purpose USB output device. Jeremy?
I'm grasping this week. It's been insane, but there is a company that produces software, so technically it counts, right?
It does, yes.
There is a place called Full Control out of Denmark. They are just amazing. Not only did they just pick up the Space Hulk contract, and yes, you will have Space Hulk on the PC, they've also just landed a new Jagged Alliance. The old-style, turn-based, proper Jagged Alliance. So if you like old-school gaming, and there are a couple of free-to-play apps that you can play just to see if they develop well or not, if you like the style. But if you actually know what turn-based combat is and have been laughing at people for saying, oh no, that is never going to sell, these guys have already kicked ass on their first Kickstarter. The Jagged Alliance prequel is going to start up next week. And hey,
nice.
There's still a market out there. Strangely enough, just like there's a market for people that want to watch us.
Hey, that's not strange. It's totally normal.
Would you like to play a game?
Josh.
Isn't it funny that in war games the computer's name was Joshua?
It's true.
Global thermonuclear war. Okay. Anyway. Pick.
Yes.
PFSense. I've been reading a lot about it. I'm going to be trying it for myself. I think I'm going to purchase a used Firebox X550E. Throw in that custom firmware in for a few extra bucks.
Hey, you should write that up as an article on this cool website I go to.
Really?
Yeah.
But I don't
what,
think
Indiegogo?
Things. Yeah, Indiegogo.
Indiegogo. If you write it up for that, that's fine. Yeah, that's cool. Right.
Yeah, but I could do screenshots. I could talk about it. It's got all kinds of nice, interesting plugins. You can do VPN, all kinds of fun things. Spam filtering. You can do it as a basic email server as well. It's pretty flexible. It's open source. hopefully it will fit our needs. And the price is certainly right. It's free.
So you just need a computer and a switch for this to work.
Correct. Yeah, pretty much. Well,
Does it need a bunch of
network
NICs
cards.
or just a single NIC?
well, two NICs.
So okay, it needs dual NIC.
You're going to need in and out.
One for WAN, one for LAN. Oh, jeez, I thought we were done with that.
Yeah.
Most
so much.
motherboards go both ways nowadays, though.
Most of them do.
All right, Alan, do you have a pick for us?
Not really. So I'm just going to say anti-pick of really crappy audio headsets.
Forgetting a headset would also be a good pick.
Yes,
Or an
I would have thrown the Howard Cosell headset on in the suitcase, but, sorry.
That's all right.
It's so busy running a marathon. This one was just on the treadmill, so it came back quicker.
Right.
Actually, what are the headsets that all you guys, not Ryan, but the other guys are using, the USB ones?
Oh, the
What is the
Plantronics
name of that?
devices?
Plantronics what?
GameCon 1 or something like that?
It's probably
Did it-
not being made anymore, but we
Yeah,
see,
mine
they kept-
died.
Well, it's not that they don't make it necessarily. They kept changing the name. It used to be called something else, and then it was what it was when we bought them. And okay, so I'm gonna research that and figure it out. And then that'll be my pick.
Okay, all right. So in the
about
future,
that?
his pick will be that device. We've just gave away all of next week's drama right there. So, all right, our show has gone a little bit lengthy this week. We appreciate everybody hanging around. If you want to watch us record this show live, you can do that every Wednesday at about 10 p.m. Eastern at pcper.com/live. If you want to share this show with your friends, tell them where they can go download the MP3s, go find the YouTube videos, that kind of stuff. You can do that at pcper.com/podcast. And again, one final reminder, if you want to donate to our Indiegogo funding project, we would really appreciate it. I've seen some contributions come in already since we've been here. It's really awesome to see that. It doesn't have to be $100. It doesn't have to be $500. It could just be $1. It could just be $5. It can just be $10. Anything to show that you are interested in this kind of stuff and that you want to support the type of content that we are making, that we hope to make going forward, would be great. So you can find a link to that on the right-hand side of every pcper.com page for the next month or so. So with that, we'll wrap up the show. We'll be back next week for another edition of the podcast. I'm Ryan Shrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malentano.
Thanks, guys.